Good afternoon, everyone. What an honor, what an honor. Such an honor to be recognized by your home institution. Hopefully it means that I've done something right. I want to thank Dr. Nestler, I want to thank Nils and Dr. Phil Zola for that kind and generous introduction. I certainly want to thank, even in his absence, Dean Charney, all of the entire faculty, administration, and staff of Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the two individuals who I would say have been really critical in my time here at this institution. Dr. Liz Garland, thank you so much, and Dr. Niels Henning, as he mentioned. Yes. There's a child's book. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old now. There's a children's book that I read to my daughters quite often by Jacqueline Woodson. The year we learned how to fly. This institution taught me how to fly in the public health space. Thank you so much. It gave me my wings. And so what I say to all of the graduates, I want to thank all of you, Mount Sinai Master's graduates of 2022, for your commitment and hard work during extraordinarily difficult and complicated times. As Dr. Nesser had already mentioned, I can only imagine the challenge many of you face these past 2 years, especially for those of you who were yearning to be in a fully in-person learning environment, but had to spend part or all of your graduate experience Zooming in from home. I know that those of you from outside the U.S. also faced additional obstacles, as did any of you whose race or background made getting and focusing on your education so unfairly difficult in a time of heightened discrimination and physical threat. For all of you, I only hope that your decision to pursue careers and lives in public health, in healthcare, in science and research, and in leadership and public service has been reconfirmed. And I hope too that your dedication strengthened as you dug deep into your studies and practice amid unprecedented and often fearful circumstances. It's an honor to return to my alma mater and receive this honorary degree. I share it with my colleagues at the health department and around this city, including no small share of Mount Sinai graduates who have made so many sacrifices to protect New Yorkers over the last 2.5 years, often at personal risk to themselves and their families. I share it with you because you too were part of this brave and dedicated team of responders. You helped run clinical trials, you studied the pandemic's effect on different communities, implement vaccination programs, and relieve staff shortages, especially during the Omicron surge. You helped coordinate the student workforce, which helped to increase staffing coverage, as well as touch hundreds of students returning to campus. You volunteered in neighboring communities, delivered meals to hospital patients, and served in countless ways to support those in need, including each other. And you did all of this while juggling your own personal responsibilities, confronting your own fears and traumas, and in many cases, working multiple stressful jobs, all while pursuing your degree full-time. You are not emerging health leaders. You've been health professionals and heroes for quite some time already. And so now I want to make sure that we give you all a huge round of applause for this moment that you are embracing. So I would like to share a few lessons, and I will absolutely take my seat. I do not want to be the one in the way of you getting your degree. But I do want to share this honor with you. I dedicate it to those we have lost to COVID and who are in mourning. A group that we must remember continues to grow each day, even as so much else about this pandemic has changed. We must also remember that this group does not equitably reflect the overall population, most especially in terms of race and class. I was incredibly honored to be appointed in September 2020 as the Health Department's first Deputy Commissioner and Chief Equity Officer. a combination that suggests how intrinsically equity is tied to our mission and how deeply committed we have been to putting anti-racism practices into action during COVID and into everything else as we move forward. That commitment to equity must be shared by leaders and health practitioners across all professions. It cannot be a secondary or a luxury priority. Let's be clear. If I had been invited to speak at Mount Sinai and received such a distinguished honor as this just a few years ago, I certainly would have thought long and hard, not out of lack of respect for the extraordinary faculty and students who are here, whom I have always held in high esteem, but because the school's Center for Anti-Racism in Practice, the Office of Gender Equity Diversity Innovation Hub, and related initiatives had not yet been formed or fully realized. I salute Mount Sinai for the leaps it made in the past few years to confront internally and externally the issues of diversity, of equity, and inclusion in science and medicine, and I'm certainly thankful that it's being recognized for facing these realities faced on. Similar, I would not have joined the New York City Health Department if it had not been centering anti-racism as a philosophy and goal for years prior, especially impressive for a government institution. But while the department has taken a whole city and whole person approach to public health, for decades it has still fallen to the trap of good intentions. And around health inequity in particular, good intentions without rigorous science, data-informed analysis, a clear-eyed understanding of root systemic causes, and a fierce ideology of purpose matched with the boldness of vision are stultifying. What James Baldwin once scathingly described as the folly and the cowardice of good intentions have long enabled people and institutions embedded in systems of power, the DOH not excluded, to at best miss the mark on effecting real change. Good intentions did not prevent Black, brown, indigenous people in New York and around the country from experiencing disproportionate rates of illness, hospitalization, and death from COVID. Not at all unrelatedly, no amount of equal protection laws or corporate diversity measures kept Black, brown, and indigenous people from disproportionately being unemployed or underemployed, experiencing housing and food insecurity, living in crowded and unsafe conditions, or working essential jobs, all things directly correlated with worse outcomes from COVID-19. When I'm asked to describe the work I do, I answer in one word: change. And the work of change comes in three main forms: changing minds, changing lives, and changing society. As scientists, researchers, health professionals, and public health leaders, our jobs largely revolve around changing minds. We present new and challenging ideas, we identify problems and suggest alternatives, we expand people's field of vision and open up realms of possibility. For me, my mind was changed at Morehouse, the legendary historically Black college where professors and classmates taught me to think beyond myself, to find my voice as a Black man. All Morehouse men are challenged to grow tall enough to wear the crown that Morehouse holds over your head, something I might have taken too literally. And then as a first-year medical student, it was changed during a 6-week trip I spent in Ghana examining traditional Western influence healing practices. It was there I first came to recognize how social and community factors impacted health outcomes. Now in my role at the health department over the last 2.5 years, the more public-facing part of my job has been to change people's mind about vaccines. But a more long-standing and behind-the-scenes part of my work involved changing minds, both inside and outside the agency, around public health itself, around equity and why it matters, around why notions like equality, inclusivity, and even diversity are insufficient to eliminate inequities and make the larger changes we need. Of course, changing minds does not automatically result in changing lives. It takes a lot of work. But when you're lucky enough to directly change lives, the rewards, as I hope and suspect you've come to know, are indeed profound. I give a lot of credit to this understanding for my affiliations with some amazing organizations and institutions that seek to defend human rights. such as the Malcolm X grassroots movement, a national organization with several chapters in major cities like New York City. One of its pivotal practice is Cop Watch, a program that monitors and documents police actions in Black and brown communities. When I was a member of MXDM, comrades and I launched a food delivery program called Feed Newark. Like the Black Panther Party, which we drew a lot of our inspiration from, we knew that changing lives meant to change the conditions in which people lived in. At Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School, I led a team of fellow budding young doctors as we expanded the school's student medical run clinic, adding clinics in local shelters and bringing clinical and social services to people who sorely needed them. The results were indeed life-changing, and we have the data to back it up. I mentioned earlier that a big part of my job has been to change people's mind about vaccines, specifically to explain to people who are reluctant or doubtful or suspicious that the vaccines are safe and that they will offer important added protection to them and their loved ones. And indeed, to the extent I, or more accurately, this mass public health effort, of which I am only one small part, have been successful, lives have indeed been changed. The more people who are vaccinated, the more people gain a level of protection from COVID-19, and hopefully, the spread of the virus will lessen. Again, it takes a lot of work. It also takes patience and follow through, or sometimes, as I have learned, a whole lot of public service announcements. A few weeks ago, while I was dining out with my family, an older Black woman announced herself, walked over, announced her age, winked at my wife before approaching me, and proudly proclaimed that my PSAs on the COVID vaccine significantly impacted her decision to get one. But even better, she said, was the example I set for so many other members of our community. These are the moments that make it worth it. Changing minds and changing lives. But as critical as these are, they only go so far. Changing society, or really the systems that make up our society, is the toughest change of all. How do we change the structures that demand so much change in the first place? Changing the systems that are rooted in racism and sexism and LGBT phobia, xenophobia, and every other form of discrimination. And hate is not a linear process. It does not flow naturally from good intentions. You are going out into a world where the inherent violence of long-standing institutional white supremacy continues to emerge over and over again. We are certainly still reeling from the most recent attacks in Buffalo, New York, as well as Uvalde, Texas. Our systems of law and policing are enshrining the open dehumanization of queer people and women, and their rapacious capitalism is resulting in climate catastrophe that will lead into global suffering and harm, especially for people of color and individuals living in low-income communities. Speaking out will not be enough. I hate to say it, but as necessary as it is, voting will not be enough. Even changing minds and lives will not be enough. Last year, my colleagues at the Health Department and I wrote something of a manifesto, passed unanimously by the New York City Board of Health in October, resolving that racism is in fact a public health crisis. Yes, resolving, not merely declaring. The meat of the resolution is a concrete set of rigorous, system-disrupting action items to which we will be held internally and externally accountable to. This is largely my job to oversee. And in your roles as biomedical scientists, as clinical researchers, as biostatisticians, epidemiologists, genetic counselors, data scientists, and healthcare administrators, deliverers, and leaders, I will be turning to you for your partnership and help. We will need all of us. My daughters, as I mentioned, my oldest, who was born on the day of New York City announced his first reported COVID case on March 1st. My youngest, who was born this past February, just as the peak of the Omicron wave. My daughters will need all of us. Your family, who are here today to witness this monumental occasion, will need everything we have. The best leadership advice I can give in this moment is also the best leadership advice I've ever received. Always be prepared to take the next challenge even when you're unprepared. We can prepare for the unpreparable by joining in solidarity, by resolving to change the systems that imprison far too many of us, and by never settling for good intentions. May you be steadfast and resolute in your search for change. Thank you.